Welcome to Momdaze, a beautiful collective of mamas and experts sharing wisdom, inspiration, and life hacks to support us on this journey through the hazy days of motherhood. Welcome to the Momdaze podcast. I'm your host, Holly Lowe, and this is our episode and solo gig this week on our topic of fertility. This is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I have been working long hours and a few years on this whole process of fertility, health, and wellness, and facing a journey that I never thought I would have to face. So I'm going to share a bit of my story this week, but I wanted to also acknowledge that this is a very multifaceted, many layered subject when it comes to fertility. And I think if we're following along through this series that we've been doing on reproductive health, you can go back and check out some of the episodes, but if you follow along and listen to what we're talking about, there's a theme. And one of the themes is the main overwhelming theme I find in all of this is about conversation. It's about changing the narrative and the stigmas that are associated with women's reproductive health. First of all, our cycles, our periods, our hormones, the mass amount of stigma and misinformation, opinions and, girlfriend conversations between women and all of the things that have been shared, passed down, and spread over the years. That misinformation, those stigmas and those conversations are so powerful in how we approach our fertility and how we approach just, how our bodies work in the first place. They've played such a big role over the years, and we're talking hundreds of years, right? Come on, ladies. So we think back Victorian era. I was watching an episode of Murdoch Mysteries the other day for my Canadian fans, and had a very, kind of laughable but eye-opening moment when they were talking about pregnancy in Victorian era and just different aspects of that and the stigmas around women. And the fact that, we really haven't come as far as we think we have. When it comes to this topic, when it comes to fertility, we have not moved further, as far away from those Victorian mindsets as you might have thought. The idea that so much of what we carry as women when it comes to our fertility health is put on us, right? And funny enough, it takes two people. It takes a sperm and an egg to make a baby. And yet when it comes to fertility issues, when it comes to struggles with fertility, this is a massive, women's, group society movement. You don't see men's fertility groups. You don't see men's fertility, support systems. There just isn't that there. And yet it's a half of the equation. In some cases, it's 100% of the equation. So it's something to think about. It's something to consider. I wanted to share my story this week on this podcast. I want to talk about the magic baby dust that you hear. How many of you have been told, if you've struggled with, conceiving, if you have lost pregnancy, if you lost a baby, how many of you have been told by others, I'm just sending magic baby dust your way? I kind of get it. I understand the intention behind it, but there are so many phrases and terms that have now become, laughable, almost in a way to deal with the pain of it. Over this past 3 to 4 years that I have been doing this journey, I've been on this roller coaster of trying to conceive, and sending magic baby dust your way is wonderful, but it doesn't work. I just wanted to give that little piece of information in case anyone out there was under the impression that sending wishes, sending baby dust is, going to work. It doesn't work. We appreciate all the thoughts we do, and we appreciate the support that's meant to share. But the idea is that there is a conversation that's not being had. There is a support system that's just not there for men and women, and couples, however that works for you, whatever that setup is in your life. But there just is not that support system and conversation happening around fertility in a way that doesn't leave you feeling broken. And that's where the term infertility leaves me very angry, because when we talk about changing the narrative, it starts right there. It starts with taking away the term infertility and replacing it with fertility. Everyone has the ability to be fertile. Every woman and man has the ability to be. Now, again, there's a multi-layered onion to this. We can keep peeling it back. It's not necessarily that everyone is functioning in a way that they can. Not everyone has the correct body anatomy, right? If you've had a full hysterectomy, then you may not have any ability to carry a baby. So hear me out. I'm talking about in the situation where your body is set up in a way that you have what's needed to be fertile, but things just aren't working. Something's not working. Some things aren't working, aren't connecting, aren't falling into place, aren't clicking. That's different. And that's where this conversation has to be focused in the positives, as well as acknowledging the stress and the strain and the struggle that comes in while you're going through this. It's not to glaze it over and gloss it over and say that trying to conceive when there are issues is easy and you should all just put a smile on your face and pretend it's, not hard. God forbid you'd ever have to deal with that or do that, because that's not the case. The case of dealing with fertility struggles and to walk through that journey, that the real focus to that is 100% the journey. It's 100% what does this process look like for me, because it's going to be different for me from one person to another. What does it look like for me? And as I'm journeying down this path, as I'm making these choices, what are the best choices I can make? What is the best mindset I can take with me through this process? What is the optimal, people I need to have on my team to do this? And then who am I surrounding myself with while I go through this? Am I surrounding myself with people who believe in this process, who believe in me, who support my goals and my dreams to further my family? Am I surrounding myself with people who have some experience in this or simply are willing to cheer me on? Am I putting those people in a place of support in my life? And that's really important. And all of this is coming from a place that, I didn't think I'd ever learn firsthand. I'll be really honest. I spent almost 20 years as a birth professional, a childbirth educator, a labor doula. I've attended countless births of other people's babies. It is an absolute joy of mine to be involved in the birth community. When I had my first, I waited long for him, and I was told I wouldn't get pregnant without some help at the time. And then that magic baby dust apparently worked then. But we did a few natural things to help cycles get regulated, and bam, the next month I was pregnant without even trying. And that was honestly a shock, a pleasant surprise. We were obviously overjoyed. And that's where our firstborn 14 years ago arrived. And if you haven't, had a chance to check out some of my stories and birth stories that we share, his was quite an adventurous story of how he arrived earthside. But we knew we wanted more. We wanted a large family. And after a couple of years, we were in a place, I had dealt with some of the trauma from his birth that I carried for a few years, and we were ready to try again, easily again, without trying, got pregnant, no issues whatsoever, and then miscarried at 9 weeks, almost 10 weeks, just after my birthday, actually. And I remember that whole situation. I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is what this feels like. This is what this feels like emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. I had never experienced this. And yet I had supported, doula clients, prenatal clients through the years who had gone through multiple miscarriages or had shared their story with me privately and personally. And it wasn't something that there was a lot of conversations about. right? Social media and all of those things. We're talking 14 years ago, 12 years ago. I just wasn't seeing or hearing these conversations around pregnancy loss, infant loss, and fertility struggles. There wasn't that conversation. So if this is something that you've lived through and you've dealt with, just understand that there is a lot more of us out there than you realize. And I'm so grateful that this conversation is gaining momentum. There is more of these conversations happening. It is more visible now. The support is more visible. But with that comes its own challenges, right? We'll touch on that in a minute. But one of the things I realized as I journeyed through that miscarriage and had a beautiful support system, thank goodness I had family that supported me. I had midwives that supported me through that actual miscarriage and the healing afterwards. But what I realized is I was more open about it than most people I knew. Because when I shared my story, I couldn't believe the number of women I knew well who were coming to me and saying, I've had multiple miscarriages. I've lost babies. And I had no idea that they had lost a baby. I would never have known that because it's just not something that's talked about. Right. And it's personal. It's something that some people want to share and some don't. And that's totally okay. But it was interesting how, as I did share my story with people on a limited basis, it was amazing to me the number of women who would come and talk about this with me and share it more openly, or share it with our moms group or with our prenatal groups. And, any support groups we had going on in my business at the time, they were more willing to share it once I had shared what I'd been through. And they would say to me later, this has brought another level of healing to that process. Even if their miscarriages had been 20 years ago, 10 years ago, they were still holding a piece of that as a private, pain. And there is a level of healing to sharing it with the right people, right? So that was for me very, it was eye-opening, but it was also cathartic too, in a way that I was able to hear this from other moms and other women who had been through that process, who were then finding some freedom and healing again from just sharing another level of that or opening up about that story again. Then as we moved on, my rainbow baby arrived, my beautiful daughter. We had her again without any struggle or effort at all. And not long after, 2.5 years after, we had our third, my second son. And, blessed that we had 3 beautiful babies, 3 amazing kids, super grateful for that. But we knew that we still wanted more. And that was always in the discussion to have at least 4. So I just really felt in my heart and in my head and everything, we knew for sure, right? For sure there'll be another one. Now, timing wise, there was a lot going on in my life at that time. We were traveling internationally a lot for my business, between Europe and Canada and the US. And we were homeschooling and world schooling and a lot going on. So when my youngest was, growing up traveling with us all the time and learning that rhythm and that routine, I really didn't think much of it. And, I was in my late 30s. I was heading up to my 40th birthday. And it wasn't until he was 4 years old that I went, oh, I should probably start thinking about this a little more. And that's when I realized, you know what, this might not be as simple as it used to be, but I have no reason to expect it to be difficult. I'm healthy. I have no issues reproductively. Everything should be great. So heading into just a kind of nonchalant, cocky attitude of, we'll just let things be. And if it happens, it happens. Well, that led to another miscarriage, an early one at 7 weeks, almost 8 weeks. And as doesn't matter how many weeks it is, it's a loss and you feel it deeply. That was more of a wake up call for me. It was oh, whoa, like I really wanted this. I didn't realize how much I wanted this until we lost that baby. And that's when things went to another level of, okay, I'm serious now. We're going to actually do this. So that unfortunately was November of 2019. We were still traveling a bit into 2020. I had a few speaking engagements internationally and things we had to do. up into February of 2020. And then March of 2020, we were taking some time off to go travel to Florida and spend some time there and just relax as a family. We got to Florida and the world shut down. Thank God I was in Florida. I was really grateful that we were somewhere that we could at least enjoy being shut down with a swimming pool and warm weather. But what was supposed to be 3 week stay turned into a over 3 month stay in another country, without paying, having to pay for healthcare if we needed it, things like that. So all of the process that I was hoping to start didn't start. The testing and the tracking and just the support, fertility support, I wanted to line up. We did as much as we could remotely, made sure everything was lined up with my cycle and everything was good. We were ticking along and we got home again, just trying to navigate 2020, got to the end of that year with, nothing happening, no pregnancies, no reason why not. And I was really feeling the anxiety of a ticking clock. I'll put it that way. Even though I had already been told that reproductively, I was much younger in my reproductive age than my biological age, and not to stress about that. There was still a birthday looming up every year, and there was still an age, stigma on me of being in my 40s. And my husband, in the same regard, we are complete opposites when it comes to how we take care of ourselves. While he values what we do, he is his own person and his own man. So, I don't control how he eats or takes care of himself. That's his thing. And to kind of get him back on board with, hey, there's supplements that we're going to be using. There's this that you need to be doing. All of these things. It was a strain for us again, that our marriage really, we had come through so much up to that point, and we had been in this beautiful season for the past, few years of just resting and restoring ourselves and our family, and not traveling. The 2 years that we stayed in Canada have been beautiful, actually, to just reestablish a new routine and to rest and to rebuild our bodies and our marriage and our family. So that was all wonderful and a gift. But when it came to working on fertility, then that was a big shift, and it's still a big shift. So when we found out we were pregnant in last spring, again, I had worked so hard up to that point to cleanse and to make sure my gut was cleaned up, to heal up my body post-COVID, because we had COVID, to deal with spike proteins, and to do everything I could find and learn and research to prepare my body to be able to be pregnant. And then to suddenly, without a lot of effort, find out we were pregnant. I was shocked, to put it that way. And I was delighted, obviously, but all of the things that come with pregnancy after any losses or any struggles or trials, it definitely opened a door to a lot of anxiety and a lot of questions and concerns about being able to carry this baby. And again, I was healthy. Everything seemed normal. Everything looked good. Baby looked good. We didn't tell our 3 kiddos at that point until I was around 9 weeks, almost 10 weeks, because everything was looking great and we felt confident about that. So we made the big announcement, let everybody know. I had already shared our pregnancy on different platforms like TikTok and things that my kids aren't on. So it really was a moment of like, whew, okay, we're good, right? We got to 12 weeks. Our next ultrasound was scheduled. All the normal things were happening. I even had the gall to go, buy a new car seat to have just ahead of time and make sure I had one on hand, because we got rid of all our baby stuff. So it was something for me that I embraced completely, because I remember with my first miscarriage and my pregnancy with my daughter afterwards, I remember the sheer panic I felt week after week of this rainbow baby pregnancy, of not being able to embrace every stage. And I just felt like this time, regardless for how long I maintain this pregnancy, I want to love this baby completely. I want it to know it's loved. I want my kids to be able to love it. And I want to take care of myself every step of the way, with people's support and with, everyone knowing that I am expecting. So, well, some people may say, that's why I don't tell anyone before I'm past 12 weeks, whatever. I think there's lots of superstition around that. None of it's founded in any way at all. It's a personal choice, though, is what I'm trying to say. And we chose to embrace it. We chose to roll with it and to, just love every minute of that pregnancy. And it wasn't until just after I had passed the 12-week mark and I was just coming up to my ultrasound date. I was at the first large event we had done in the whole since 2019, really beginning of 2020, and it was a memorial for a friend. Her sister had passed away, and so we had waited and waited to plan this memorial, and we did this. And it was midway through that day when I started spotting. And I cannot even tell you the intense and immense feelings of grief and panic and disappointment and all the emotions that just come crashing in the minute you see that. It could have been nothing, right? And that's what my logical brain, is telling myself through the process as I'm trying to maintain some decorum at this event at, not even at my home. My kids are there, my family's there, and I'm trying to sit down for a bit, put my feet up and just take it easy. But while that's happening, everything inside is falling apart. And by far, to this day, the only comparable feeling I had of that was the day that my dad passed away suddenly. And it was that same shocking grief and crushing feeling that hit. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm not trying to make that sound more dramatic than it was, but that was the intensity of those feelings. Because when I fully embraced it up to that point, I also fully embraced the hope that at 12 weeks, beyond 12 weeks, we were in the clear. Now, I wouldn't change a thing. Looking back, at the time, I was angry at myself. I felt angry. I went through all the stages of grieving over the following months. And I now can look back and say I wouldn't have changed any of that. Because like I said, I know how loved that baby was. I know they felt loved. And I know that my kids embraced it completely. And that, we embraced it completely. And we, for that short time, for just over 3 months, had that other member to our family. So I appreciate that. And I can be in a space now of feeling grateful for that. It doesn't change the pain though, right? It doesn't change the anguish and the disappointment and the what ifs. We passed through February of this year, and that was our baby's birth date. It came and went. I cried on that day. I felt the weight of it. I honored that and acknowledged it. Our kids understood that, and I held space for them so they would be able to understand that it's normal to grieve through this. It's part of just loving and letting go. And it was a really interesting learning process. I'll put it that way. It was a beautiful hindsight. It was hard, and it still is hard. It's hard some days, and then other days I can still see the beauty of it. I can still see that light coming in. But really the truth of it is there's this roller coaster of feelings that happen when you're dealing with fertility. And when you get those comments like, I'm, sending you magic baby dust, great. No, thank you. I need a lot more than magic baby dust though. And it's the constant juggle of these emotions while maintaining a mindset that is allowing you to heal and move forward and set you up for success, and still allow you to live and allow you to appreciate your other parts of your life where fertility can take you over completely. If you're in fertility processes like, IUIs and IVF warriors and all of those mamas, listen, you know how much it can envelop every part of your life, because it touches on your partners. It touches on your children, if you have them. It touches on your work, your scheduling. It touches on your cycle for, timing, relationship, intimacy with your partner. It affects your travel. It affects, I was not traveling to other time zones for a while because I didn't want to mess up my fertility tracking and my cycle tracking. It affects every area. of your life. And yet through this process, you're supposed to just hold it together and carry on through the disappointments, through the hormones, maybe if you're dealing with that, with IVF and whatnot, through the cycle tracking, through the implantation, through the retrievals, whatever that looks like, you're putting this, and society in general puts this feeling on women that you're going to just put a smile on and carry on. And I decided at that moment when we lost that baby, I decided that no, I was not. I was not going to do that. I made a concerted effort, and it's a daily thing. It is really a daily conversation in my own head. It's a mindset process, and it's a heart process of healing and growing and understanding what we went through, honoring the process and honoring that grieving process. But being able to say, hey, you know what? It hurts, it sucks, and there's grief and pain involved in losing pregnancies, to lose babies, and to struggle with fertility. That constant monthly roller coaster of hoping and, denial, and then disappointment, and then back up the ladder we go again of hoping. It's very real. And to deny that or to not acknowledge that, I think, is such a disservice to this whole process, to this whole journey of fertility. And for us as women, especially, but guys, for men as well. So don't forget your partners in this process. My husband has been through 3 miscarriages with me, and he will tell you that it is such a helpless feeling as a partner to not know how to fix it. Right? Men, whatever your partner scenario is, are fixers. And generally the nurturing is much more a feminine trait, regardless whether you're nurturing or fixing or whatever that looks like. When it is out of your control, when that process is ending, when you're miscarrying, when you have a stillbirth, when you are not able to conceive easily, there is a helplessness that hits. And the desire to just fix it can be very strong, especially for your partners. It's something to acknowledge. It's not something to, brush away or to discredit in any way. To acknowledge their pain, their disappointment, and the shame that's also often attached to our partners when infertility is being thrown at them. Right? When that word is being used, when it's an issue of their own fertility, potentially, when it's a team effort and it's not working, right? When there's issues on both sides, regardless what the situation is, there can be shame on either partner's part. And to carry that alone or to try to deal with that, you'll watch multiple times, relationships will fall apart, marriages will end, families will struggle. And that's not even bringing in the financial stress of going the extra mile and having things like IUI and IVF paid for. If you're just looking at this as a journey, as a process, and missing all these components that wrap up to make it what it is, then it's very difficult to understand and appreciate what that looks like. And if you're on the outside, like I used to be, if you're on the outside of this process and not fully understanding it, honestly, the best thing you can do is support. But that support does not come with unwarranted or unwelcomed advice. It doesn't come with comparisons, false hope. I know it can seem very touchy and difficult. What do I say when my friend miscarries? How do I support, a family member who's lost a baby? How do I care for a friend who's struggling to get pregnant? Just be there. It doesn't involve any special tactics or words or magic baby dust. It really doesn't. It involves, hey, this has got to be hard. I understand this must be really difficult. Or how are you feeling about this today? Where are things at? What's the process look like? Allow them to dump their technical story on you. Let them tell you about their cycles. Let them tell you about egg retrieval. Let them share this lingo. Let them share these conversations. What did your specialist say to you? Where are you at in your IVF cycle? How are you feeling about this today? How's your partner feeling? Having that open door where it's a safe space to say, you know what, I'm struggling. This is hard right now. And to just hold space. Now, I say that specifically because holding space can sound so vague. Holding space, like I said, is not trying to fix. It's not trying to solve. It's not trying to offer solutions. It's simply the emotional capacity to hold that person emotionally, and whether it's physically, mentally, whatever, and to say, wow, I hear that. I can hear how much that must mean to you, and to acknowledge some of those things. And that's it. It doesn't have to be anything bigger. It doesn't have to be magical. It doesn't have to be the right words. Don't be afraid of that. Just be there. That's the best thing I can say, having been on this side of it now and having been on the other side of it. So I think, when we're looking at, in the coming weeks on the podcast, as we're looking at fertility, we're looking at pregnancy, we're looking at birth and postpartum, we're going to go through the full gamut. It's really important that we understand as much as possible. We can understand the layer upon layer upon layer of what goes into fertility, what goes into our reproductive health, what goes into our wellness. It's a combination of everything. It's a combination of your partner's health and well-being, their mindset and mental wellness. It's your own physical body wellness, but also your mindset and your mental and emotional wellness. It's dealing with past trauma. It could be all of that, and it could be none of that. And that is the overwhelm that comes with fertility. That is the overwhelm that comes with the struggle for those who struggle to get pregnant. It is the layer upon layer of pulling it back, trying to connect the puzzle pieces and find what clicks. And then on top of that, hoping you do solve that puzzle, hoping that you don't run out of time, so to speak, knowing that there are many, many options available, but they may not all be for you. And working within those boundaries and working within the boundaries you set for yourself, and then reassessing what those boundaries might look like as you go through the process, as you go through these stages of this journey, and saying, you know what, I thought I would never want to do this, but maybe I do. We've never had a conversation about surrogacy. Maybe we should. Maybe we'll talk about that. We've never had a conversation about adopting, but maybe we'll have a conversation about that. Just knowing that it's going to shift and it's going to change, and there may be new layers added, and there may be pieces that are removed completely as you solve parts of the puzzle. But I think it's important that we share these stories. It's important that we open up about our fertility journeys, our losses, and we share them in an appropriate way, meaning we choose to be victorious. And I don't say that lightly, because I know the pain. I know the pain of losing babies. I know the pain of losing pregnancies. I know the pain of not getting pregnant when you thought you would. I know that pain. But you can choose to be a victim, or you can choose to be victorious. It can happen for you, or it can happen to you. And that is 100% a mindset shift that doesn't happen easily. It takes work. It's a process. You may need a coach to help you with that. You may need a therapist to walk you through that. You may just simply need to constantly remind yourself that it's a process. But choosing to walk in that victorious attitude, or the overcomer attitude, and removing the victim mentality, it's a really big key component to our wellness in general. And if our wellness in general is being bettered, is being up-leveled, then your fertility will be as well. And again, there's no easy answer, because it's such a complex situation. But for some, that's the only puzzle piece left missing, is the mindset component. And why would you not want to try, right? Why would you not want to just put that last effort, or that push that puzzle piece in that direction and go, okay, let's consider this. How am I approaching scenarios of my life? How am I allowing the sunlight in these other areas of my life? How am I living to the fullest in these other parts of my life? And, not allowing my fertility journey to overtake everything, to not allow it to steal my joy. That in its essence is such a big factor. If we can find a way to do that and have the right support and the right people lined up, all the things we've talked about, this will be a really important part of your journey. And whether you're, still considering having kids, you haven't even started that journey, or whether you're like me and you've had some kids and, you're not done yet, but your body and your partner's body maybe are not cooperating or coordinating the way they're supposed to, whatever that looks like, wherever you are in this process, understanding that A, you're not alone, but B, it's going to feel very alone, right? Oxymoron or what? You want to connect with the right community. And you're going to hear the following week, you're going to hear from the amazing Emily Getz, founder of Day One Fertility, Day One Fertility. And an amazing conversation we had. You're going to want to hear that because it is really integral to your journey through this process to have the right community to be connected in with. And I'm not talking about just Facebook groups. I'm not talking about all the, TikTok and Instagram and all the places that you can follow other people's stories, because that in itself can be a huge detriment. It actually can. Now, I appreciate that the conversation's out there. I appreciate that we have these platforms to share our stories and to make it more of a conversation, that much needed conversation. But like I said in the beginning, unless you're surrounding yourself with the right support, the kind of support that will give you a safe space to have those days when you need to just vent or to cry or to be angry or whatever that looks like, but to have somebody facilitating that process as Emily does in her particular business, who can come along and say, all right, but now what? What are we going to do about this? Right? Where are we going to shine this sunlight back into this? We need to crack it open and shine some light in, and we're going to support each other, lift each other up, and we're going to make this work for you right now, where you're at. Let's find what we can do. Let's take an action. Let's work on this mindset piece. Let's adjust this. And again, we're not talking medical procedures. We're talking about support. We're talking about a community that says, hey, I'm here. I'm here to hold space with you. I'm here to listen. I'm here to share. Let's work together on this. So I would highly recommend you consider that kind of support. I mean, within our community, within the Oil Babies community, we also have things like our Fertile Ground Cleanse program to help you get the best starting point for your gut health, your heart and mind, that those three brains working together to connect together and to support your body in just the basic processing that needs to happen. So you have a ground zero. So you have, that fertile ground to start with. We have that kind of system in place for you. We have, great connections and guests that we have on our podcast, in our community, and the things that we share. So those are the kinds of places and support systems you're going to want to gather around you as you walk through this. And if you're in the thick of it, you may already have these beautiful communities that you're a part of. Lean into that. And, there's always room for more. Let me put it that way. There's always room for the right connections and the right support, or, maybe shifting that as time goes by. And you realize that maybe you've shifted, maybe things have changed, maybe your journey has changed and you need a different kind of support. So be willing and open maybe to look at that and consider who you have around you. What your story is your story, just like it's my story of loss and of grief and of learning to move forward, and that victorious mentality, that mindset to choose joy and to not let the tragedy of life steal that joy. Easier said than done, I understand, but that's where the journey comes in. Thanks for listening. I'm looking forward to next week's episode, so stay tuned and you're going to be able to hear more on this beautiful community that we connected with Emily. Would you like to learn more? Find me on Instagram and YouTube at Momdaze Podcast.